Have you ever wondered about life's biggest questions? Like, why am I here? What happens when we die? Or what else is out there? Well, we have, and we love to talk about it. And if you're listening, we think you probably do too. I'm Robin.
And I'm Karen. And we've spent our lives searching for those answers, and we're seekers just like you.
We'll be talking to some of the most fascinating spiritual teachers, healers, and scientists, and showing you how you can use some of their spiritual practices for yourself.
We'll also be sharing stories of other seekers to motivate you to live your fullest life.
And we'll be translating it all, so the spiritual stuff won't feel so out there.
So if you're curious, get ready to rediscover why we're here together.
What I love most about being a seeker is that when you're brave enough to show the world who you really are, the universe can't wait to attract and introduce you to others who are just like you. You get that phone call or email or have that conversation with a friend, and you get the, well, you just have to meet so-and-so. And then the magic happens. You're suddenly introduced to that new old friend that you just haven't met yet. One of those new old kindred friends of ours is Julie Haines.
We met Julie right before the beginning of the pandemic over a Zoom call when Robin was at my house. We had just had our past life regression session with Michelle Brock, and were in a state of spiritual awe and amazement over the revelations we both received from our readings. It was as if Julie stepped in on cue to take those insights to an even deeper, richer level. Julie is a psychic medium, past life regressionist, intuitive success coach, and founder of the Lightwell Center, located in Virginia's beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains. And she's here with us today.
Julie, you have an incredible seeker story. So we need to hear about your journey to now. Can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up and how you discovered your spiritual gifts?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Midwest, traditional Christian family, but my mother, thank God, was a little off, a little weird. She, when I was just 7, decided that she had a calling to go to India. So she picked up, left 4 children, crazy back then, and took off to India, studied under a guru, came home, and, I was the only kid in kindergarten with the Bhagavad Gita, one of those little books, and I thought it was fabulous. She was really, I think, where I got this. It just sort of came naturally, and I watched her spiritually unfold, and she would talk about astral travel. She would talk about seeing auras, and I was the baby. I was the youngest, and I realized that when she was talking about colors, I was saying, oh yeah, mommy, look at that color over there. Or I see that color. Do you see that color? So it was kind of natural. And when she sort of owned her own spiritual self, it really gave me permission to do the same thing. But there is the back end of that story. And that is when she got home, she lost a lot of friends. She came back into tradition, right? And my father was not okay with it. And so there was this big upset in our family where my mother ended up, they got divorced and her life was really, really different. And it became very hard for her. So that's part of the reason why I think I turned my back on spirituality, because I was shocked at the reception of her family and her friends, my dad. And so I really turned away from my spirituality for a long time when I was in my teens.
Wow. I didn't know that.
That's incredible. So how did that impact you in your teenage years?
I did see things and I did ignore them. It was kind of cool that I could tell all of my girlfriends who was going to ask them to prom. But then I had a bit of a scary situation that happened to me when I was about 17, and I could feel the presence of some dark energy and everything that had happened with my mom. And I just thought, I just want a normal life. And so I kind of went, la, 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 la. I don't want to hear you. I don't want to see you. Please go away for a while. And so that's what happened. I went on to college. I got married. I had a great career, but spirit thankfully never gave up on me. So I had lots and lots of wild experiences while I was trying to live a normal life, you guys.
We need to hear some of those. But I also need to ask you, with your mom, what was the catalyst for her to go to India? Did she meet somebody that inspired her? Did she read something?
I think my mom was just wired naturally like me. I think she always knew that there was so much more.
So then did you end up after the divorce, were you living part-time with your mom, part-time with your dad?
My dad took off. So
Your dad took off.
Yeah, my dad took off and kind of left us. And so my
Really?
mom had 4 kids. And so it was kind of a tragedy. And so it was also a cautionary tale. We lived in real poverty for a long time. My mother worked multiple jobs. She was an RN, but she always had that glimmer in her eye, that far away look. But she was not really able, I don't think, to ever really grasp and fully accept her spiritual gifts. She ended up not having the easiest life. And I think that's so much because she couldn't be who she was. There wasn't room in society, in her, immigrant Italian family upbringing to be this kind of horse of a different color. And so I'm glad that I'm finally doing what I came here to do, because I think that's a real important part of finding joy. And I wish my mom had been able to have. She's passed, she's in spirit. And now she's great. I talk to her all the time. We have a much better relationship, even, I have to say.
I mean, she didn't have this support. There's the reality, right? Like there is,
Right.
which is what we all know. You can be spiritual, but there is also being human and having that life. So it's finding that balance.
That's really what my whole practice is all about.
Yeah.
It is about taking people in the real world and reattaching them, reconnecting them with their soul self, their longing, their gifts, the reason why they're here, and then incorporating that in a really powerful way so you can also pay your mortgage and have incredible spiritual experiences.
You've had an incredible career, speaking of, and spent a lot of your life in the very much head game of corporate America, but you traveled a ton all over the world. Talk a little bit about those experiences and the influence that those had on you in your life.
Yeah. And where spirituality kind of was weaving itself within this very executive world. And I think also you were a woman in a very male-dominated field. Can you talk about all of that? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think it's inspiring for a lot of people.
I always said the harder I worked, the luckier I got. So meaning I didn't really believe in luck. But I did raise very quickly in a very heavily engineering, construction dominated field. And I became a very successful corporate executive, running billions of dollars worth of work. I worked in 87 countries, and my whole career was focused on working in the poorest and most war-torn countries in the world. I mean, I feel like I've had 3 lifetimes in one. I feel so grateful for what I learned. My work was all about, building basic infrastructure, schools, water yards. And you guys, it was so much fun. Like one day I would be, talking to a presidential cabinet, giving them advice about economic development and working with poor and disenfranchised peoples. And then the next day I'd be in the middle of a village, digging holes, putting a water yard in, and then talking to like the village chief under the banyan tree. I mean, it was wild. Here's what I learned. We are all so alike, from the most disenfranchised person to the richest, most powerful person. And one of the things that I noticed when I was doing so much work, specifically in Africa, people were so poor, but they were so happy. And so that was one of the things I think was a real aha moment, because I had a spectacular career, but there was always something missing. There was a hole that no matter what worldly success I had, it wouldn't be filled. I was out and I was seeing all these horrible things and injustice and poverty and sadness and death all around me. And yet there was this element of authenticity that I lacked. I was doing some of what I was supposed to do, but not really. I was driven by a worldly success compass, and what I was supposed to be doing was being driven by my soul and my need to connect with people and help to empower people in a really significant way, not just bringing water, but doing other things.
Do you feel like when you would meet the people, whether they were poorest or they were helping run the country, did you find that there were specific spiritual practices or faiths that ended up helping you really then dig deeper to figure out what it was that you were missing?
Robin, that's such a great question. What I found is I did a lot of research and I did a lot of integrating into the community. I was probably overseas about 6 months a year. And I was a single mom trying to raise 2 kids and trying to, keep it all together. And so what I found out when I was doing all this work and being in all these different cultures that had very, very different religions. I mean, I was working in countries where they were Muslim or they were animists. They were animal work, very, very old traditions. I spent a lot of the decade of the 90s in India. So that was very much such a wonderful thing to go back where my mother had really found her strength. The idea of Eastern religion, Western religion, and even I'm very supportive of all religions or spiritual faiths as long as they are respectful of everybody else. It's about humanity to other humans. And that's what I really think is important.
What shifted? Why didn't you just continue doing that?
Well, this is the craziest story. So I was on my way to the country of Jordan when a colleague's spouse had an accident and died. Terrible tragedy. So I quickly decided that I would reroute my trip and go to the funeral and of course pay my respects. And I went to the funeral and there was just something so weird. And I was almost having an out of the body experience. It was so tragic. She had multiple children and it was just a really, really sad situation. I then left the funeral, went to Jordan, and I was having all of these dreams. I was very aware of every bit of the circumstances of this person's death. And I thought, that's really weird. I got home all jet lagged and I decided, I'm going to take a shower. You fly overnight. So you've been on a plane for 30 hours. So I was exhausted. I go take a shower. I walk out of the shower into my bedroom and this woman is standing in front of me. And I'm certain she was quite dead when I saw her last. So I'm like, okay, I'm either one, having a complete psychotic break, or this is really happening. And then it's like, oh my God, this is really happening. And what I didn't tell you is that all these years that I was doing my real job, spirit would find me everywhere. I would be in the just most random place. I'd be going and getting a cup of coffee. I could walk into a coffee shop and someone would look over and it was like they were glowing with light. And they would kind of nod to me and I think, oh, here we go. I'm like, hello, and they would come over and they would give me information. I could be in the farthest corner of the earth and it was like spirit. I was constantly having guides, seers, mediums walk up to me. I thought, this is so strange, and they became more and more frequent. And then I had this experience, this mediumistic experience, where this dead woman was standing in front of me in my bedroom, talking to me without moving her mouth. And I thought, okay, wow, spirit, I hear you. You've got my attention. I will do something now. I will do what I think I'm supposed to do, and I will investigate this. So,
wow. When you say she talked but wasn't moving, what were you hearing? How were you hearing it?
I could just hear her. At the time, I think I heard her with like my spirit ears.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
If my husband would have walked into the room, one, I don't think he would have seen her, nor do I think he would have heard her.
Right.
But I was able to do both. It was like she was telepathically communicating directly to me.
Had you met her?
I had met her once.
Okay, so you knew her voice.
Yeah.
So you knew, okay.
It was a strange circumstance around her death, and it was very tragic and very accidental. And she was quite startled. And so I've actually done a lot of thinking about this because she said she didn't leave. She said, I don't want to leave my children. And so she said, will you help me? Will you help me? So she was asking me to help her. And I'm thinking, God, I think I'm having a nervous breakdown. I don't think I won't be able to help myself, let alone you. I'm thinking, oh my God, what do you mean help you? She became a pretty constant companion. And it took me about a year and a half to find another medium that could help her cross over.
Wow. And so because you had that experience, what did you do from a spiritual perspective? Like, did you confide in your husband? Like, what did you do?
I told my husband, and what was good is my husband and I worked together overseas for the last 10 years of our career. We were a husband and wife team. And so he had experienced all these strangers coming up to me for 10 years. So when I was like, well, as if it could get any weirder, let me tell you what just happened. So he was okay. And he said, you've got to do something with this. He's really my soulmate. And he encouraged me. I'm trained as a scientist. I'm a technical person by training. I'm a scientist. I'm a social scientist, and I have an MBA. So here's all this spiritual airy fairy stuff. And I'm thinking, I need to get to the bottom of this. And I need to understand why this is happening to me. And so I went on this quest and I read every book I could. I went to England and I studied at the Arthur Findlay College. I studied at the Edgar Cayce Institute. I really just made it my night job. I was still doing my day job to understand everything I could about spirituality and where this was coming from and why it was happening to me. And I think the best part, I have to tell you the end of the story, this huge learning revealed something that changed my life. And that was everybody has the same ability that I do, that we all are born with this sixth sense. And I was so sure of it in my studies. We all have the ability to communicate with our soul and spirit guides and angels. And it's there if we exercise it. So your sixth sense is like a muscle. And if you don't use it, it atrophies. And as soon as you start exercising it every day in your life, it's amazing what happens.
I can just see your mom over on the other side going, yeah. You go, Julie.
I know.
Right? Because I think, especially for someone like you, who was so corporate, who's so disciplined. Yeah, those little signs, those little people that would come up to you were just sort of like knocking on the door, right? But it feels like you almost had to get to that place where you were physically exhausted and that you didn't have any kind of a wall up that just allowed that little crack to open up. But you still had to be willing to be open to that.
I think that there's no such thing as coincidence. And so when I decided to sort of turn my back to spirit and really run hard and run fast and achieve in an earthly sense, that I do think that does lend a lot of credibility. And I have a lot of clients that are very much like me. They're CEOs of companies. And so a couple of things that I did to augment my own training was not only to explore psychism, mediumship, but I was also really able to start seeing people's, like I'd be talking to somebody in a boardroom and I'm seeing their grandmother and then I'm seeing them back in the 1600s and I'm thinking, oh Lordy, it's craziness, how can I tell them that their grandmother's standing behind them and that they were a Viking, but how can I not tell them that? So I did go ahead and I got certified in past life regression hypnotherapy because I thought if I'm going to be able to see this person's like past life, that's one thing. If I say, oh, in a past life, I believe you were this, that's maybe credible, maybe not. How do I prove it? If I can take them on the journey to that past life with hypnotherapy, through, the learnings and the teachings of like Dr. Brian Weiss and other greats that have really opened up that field. How powerful is that for them to experience it? So I've sort of folded that in. And I also got certified as a high performance coach. So again, I deal with a lot of people that are trying to walk that line between being a responsible human and being a responsible spiritual being. And I always tell everybody, listen, you're a spirit having a human experience. Remember, you're not a human that's going to occasionally have a spiritual experience. So let's flip that on its head and see how you weave together that perfect life here while you're here, making sure you actually get done what you planned.
Talking about that spiritual education, you talked about studying in England.
Can you just give us a little snippet about the Arthur Findlay School? Because gosh, I want to go there. I visually like Harry Potter and, the whole thing. for anybody who's listening and doesn't know what I'm talking about, this Arthur Findlay School, all I can say is just Google it.
AFC, Arthur Findlay College in Stansted, England. It's been a spiritual mediumship and psychic college for probably 100 years now. And all that happens there is spiritual things and talking to dead people. So I like to laugh and I say to my husband, speaking of Harry Potter, it is very Hogwarts. It is so much fun. It's this beautiful Tudor mansion on these grounds. And then there's this tiny little church chapel with these headstones in the cemetery, and the grounds are so beautiful. People even go there and talk about how they hear the fairies. Like, it's so crazy. It's incredible. The caliber of teaching is amazing. And, spiritualism in the UK is quite a bit more normal than it is here in America. I've read that approximately 25% of UK people are spiritualists or believe in mediumship and psychism. And it's, there's a whole religion around, there's the Spiritual National Union. So they actually run the school, but you don't have to be part of that necessarily. But it's a wonderful place and it's very magical. And I say, even a muggle can talk to a dead person at AFC.
Wow.
That sounds like my kind of place. So
I know. You have
Robin and I we're so going there. I mean, as soon as they lift this thing, you got a list that's on it.
There's a few other places that are really good. Edgar Cayce in Virginia Beach they have some fantastic trainings and some very good teachers. Omega, of course, in New York. And then there's all sorts of things that happen in Sedona. So if you're out on that side of the country, there's wonderful places if you look for them.
Well, so you come back from all of that learning, and then you decide that you too want to start your own practice, teaching, helping others. Walk us through that journey and how that evolved.
I really wanted to tell people what I discovered, which was we all have a sixth sense. I think we actually have more than six senses, but I'm exploring. I'm doing a lot of meditation to see what the seventh sense is, but we all have the sixth sense. And it's very powerful. It has a lot to do with really getting into the flow of our energetic being and really getting in tune with energy. I'm a scientist, and science has taught us that all we are is energy. And we're energy. Energy can be neither created nor destroyed. And so it didn't make sense to me that we would be these human beings without an ability to sense energy, which would be the most net. If we are made of energy, why shouldn't we be able to sense it? All I'm doing when I'm in my psychic mediumship self is I'm controlling and expanding my energetic self to blend with whoever I'm reading for, and then connecting with that energy, allowing it to penetrate into my third eye, and then allowing pictures or sounds or images or knowing to bubble up in my own energetic being. And then all of a sudden I know something about a perfect stranger that's outside of what I would normally know. There's a method and a practice. So that is what I wanted to do with my center. I wanted people to be so empowered and know that they are divine sparks. They have everything that they need within their own person. And that's all I want to do for the rest of my life. That's it.
Oh my goodness. I think you are sparking a lot of people who are either watching or listening right now. I mean, your passion and enthusiasm and knowledge for anybody who's just even a little bit curious, hearing what you're talking about. I would hope if they're listening to this or watching, they want to start looking into what can they do themselves. And that is what you are inspiring right now.
I've never heard somebody describe it that way before, that I could literally visualize what you're talking about and how I could potentially do it. It is remembering that it's that first. Remember, we are energy.
Well, and let's talk about energy. Let's talk about chakras.
One of my favorite subjects. On this journey, when I realized this was all about commanding energy and understanding our energy, using it to expand and contract, I also decided to become a yoga teacher. And as part of that year-long yogic journey to get certified as a yoga teacher, I was there to expand my knowledge and to be able to utilize my physical body with my energetic flow and to help my students do that. So chakras, If anybody is listening that doesn't know what that is, very basically, think of your body as having a highway system within it, where our energy is going through all the different roads. Well, we have a major highway system that goes right from our tailbone all the way up to the crown of our head. And along that are 7 major centers. And those major centers are called your chakras. And even the ancient yogis and those, before Plato and Aristotle, I mean, way, way, way back, talked about the chakras and the energetic flow. And we picture our 7 chakras that are typically shown as colors. Your root chakra, for example, is red. Your sun, the center of your being, which is your solar plexus chakra, your place of willpower, is like the sun, a burning bright yellow. So we go through all of those chakra systems. So the idea is the ancient yogis believed that when we come to this lifetime as babies, our chakras are beautiful and clear. They're all spinning like little vortex fans, and our energy is just flowing and flowing, and we're practically glowing from this flow of energy. But then think about what happens to us as people. We're little toddlers and we toddle over to the stove and we touch the stove and it burns us. And we go, there's pain in that. And so a little bit of our chakra sense might close down because we've experienced something as our human that has injured us. Think about horrible other things that happen to people, sexual assault and being unwanted or being in poverty or being hungry or being bullied or any of those things. Anything that causes trauma, drama, betrayal, or grief in our lifetimes can shut down our chakras, which means our energy is not really flowing. And that means that we're not going to be able to command our really powerful energetic self if we have all these things that are not allowing the flow. So it makes perfect sense. And again, to me, I'm a scientist. So I was like, so how can I make that really tangible? Think about your physical body. If your arteries are clogged and your blood is not flowing, it makes your heart really pump harder. Everything is harder. You're out of breath. Your heart is pumping, or God forbid, you have a heart attack. Flow is a very natural state that you want in your physical body. It's also incredibly important for your energetic self. So I teach that we have to cleanse our chakras, clear our chakras. I go through release exercises where people can get really clear about releasing their past traumas, making room. When you get rid of all the stuff you're carrying around, even other people's baggage that gets caught in your energy, you clear it out and you have room then to really manifest and get clear about why you're here. So chakras are the beginning point of all of my classes.
That was such a good way of putting it. Really, because I do think that people need that analogy. I think what's surprising, and you as a scientist, I would imagine agree, it's so strange that we're not taught this from the time we're so young.
Really a shame. And I agree with you. Famous Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, this fabulous woman who did all this research to say that dis-ease over periods of a long time can turn into disease. So we can actually, when our chakras are blocked and when our energy is blocked, we can fester things that will turn into a disease. Human emotions are so complex. And I also believe in a spiritual state, when we're a discarnate spirit. So right now we're incarnate. That means we're in a physical body. But when we die and we're discarnate spirits, I've been told as a medium, there's no such thing as human emotions. And so this idea of getting wrapped around the axle in your emotions or overusing your brain, your conscious processing brain, versus allowing your brain to just expand. We only use 10% of our brains. What's going on in the other 90%, right? So it really is so integrated. So the idea of mind, body, spirit is so important for total wellness and health. Should be taught. I hate to say it, but I think cultural differences that are then further complicated by religious practices and things that aren't allowed to be just spiritual in nature, like neutral spiritual practice. I wish we could just do that. I think we're moving in the right direction, though.
I think so much of the reason we aren't or haven't been taught in the past, or it isn't a part of any sort of curriculum. There's so much fear around what will be discovered, how much power can be released.
My practice in India reminds me of a story, a very short story, if I could tell you about it, but it's one of the things that I use in class. There's an old Hindi story about the webmaster. And the webmaster, the world sits and there's a web, an intricate web all around the world. And the web is what actually keeps everything intact and moving. And that at the intersection of every part of that intricate web is a perfect crystal. And those crystals are our individual soul selves. And the crystal, we each hang and we each have a role to play. It's our job to shine and sparkle and be clear and honest about our power and who we are and the individuality of our own crystals. And that without us doing that, the efficacy of the web starts to decay. So when we're here in our human self, if we're not shining who we meant to be, the story goes that the web starts to collapse. But the worst part is, if we're not shining who exactly we're supposed to be, we cannot be this light, nor can we be a mirror that actually reflects the lights of others. So I was sitting in meditation and this poem just came to me. And I'll tell you my poem because it's based on that story of the webmaster and how we have to keep the world intact by being ourselves. And let's see, how does it go? There exists two ways to share the light. Be first the candle in the night. Should candle's burden be laden low, become light's mirror from which to glow.
I want some of that.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness.
It's beautiful and simple. Like at the same time, you put that so beautifully.
We all have to be lights and we all have to be mirrors. And we can't be cracked mirrors because then we can't actually reflect what's really going on in our life and in the lives of others. And we shouldn't ever hide our lights. So many people are stuck. And so many people are so afraid to be who they are because of what happens to them when they speak their truth.
Right. I mean, look at your mom.
Yeah, look at my mom. It's about putting it in practice too, you guys. So that's another thing that I spend a lot of time teaching. We talk about taking time for self-care, but then, we also can do some real exercises that empower us and get us clear. And I think we did some of that. I gave some ideas to you guys
I'm
last
really
year.
excited to talk about some of these things.
Yes, let's definitely. They're great and they're easy to do.
Let's talk about if you can dream it, you can do it. So manifestation. So dreaming about my perfect life. Yes, I'm spiritual, but yes, I still like to have some nice things. I like to go on vacation. I like a hot bath. So one of the things that I do is I have a journal that's only about my manifestation. Now, why is that important? Even wonderful Esther Hicks that channels Abraham talks about the law of attraction. So I absolutely believe in the law of attraction. And I believe, though, that people get so distracted that they spend most of their time thinking about what they don't want versus getting really clear about what they do want. If you can get people to think about what they do want, they don't think big enough because they know that they want it. But then this other part of their monkey mind goes, yeah, but how is that possible? So I created these tools that my students use, and I think they love them. I think you guys are both doing them too. So what you do is you journal your perfect life, and it can be anything. And you feel like you already have it, whatever your perfect life is. You really get clear about what that is. Things that you want, but you don't know how you're going to get them. So then part 2 of that exercise is to say, okay, I want to be able to spend 4 hours in nature, and I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage to be able to do that. So what you say is you have a little to-do column and a to-do list. And you put yourself on one side and you put the universe on the other side. And you say then to the universe, I really want to figure out how I can pay my bills and still have 4 hours to be in nature doing yoga. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue my yoga practice, and you're going to, universe, figure out how I'm going to get more money so I can afford to take 4 hours off a day for my practice. And it's that kind of thing. And it's really getting clear is what I'm going to do is this, and the universe is going to align the stars because I am speaking this intention into the universe. And the minute I speak those words, the universe can respond. And so it's that kind of thing. And I never, ever concern myself with some of the hows, because when we start to go into our executive functioning frontal lobe brain, we don't know because it's only driven by our ego. So we only have the knowledge from this lifetime is all that the ego brain knows. But the universe and my subconscious know all of my lifetimes, know all of the secrets of the universe that I can't even conceive of. So when you put it out there without any doubt and attaching it to real feeling, like you feel like you already have it. And Esther Hicks says, if you spend 17 seconds a day really putting out in the universe what you want, the universe will respond instantly. So I don't know, I'm Italian, more is more sometimes. So I always try to do 2 minutes just because I think, 2, because there's me and there's the universe and we're coming together. So 2 minutes of feeling that full joy of having the perfect life. There's all sorts of other tools too that are a little less magical, but just even getting clear about what your perfect work week looks like. Writing in your schedule time for yourself to meditate. There's power in the pause. That reminds me of a practice that my husband and I started over a year ago. We had some personal crises that we were dealing with, and I started to really get clear about what does success look like? Whose definition of success are you running your life by? In fact, I studied with Robert Holden, who's an amazing guy. He's a friend and a mentor to me. His theory is your definition of success will consciously and subconsciously dictate every other decision you make in your life. So you better get clear about what your definition of success is and whose definition of success. One of the things that my husband and I do every morning is we have coffee klatch, and it's sacrosanct. Everybody knows, all my clients know, our family knows, don't call us for this 1 hour where we're sitting and just being with each other, taking time to be with each other. It always starts kind of slow because we haven't had enough coffee. But then by the end, we always ask each other, what does success look like for you? And we answer it. And it's funny, when we first started, it was all about, well, I have a 3:00 meeting and I'd like to Over time, this practice has become success looks like cooking dinner together. I really want to journal today. Success looks like journaling. We have to remember that we are in charge. You are in charge of your life. You may not be able to manage or control everything that happens to you. But what you can manage is the choices that you make.
I love that. I mean, it is so much about owning your choices and taking responsibility, right? For the positive and the not so positive choices. We all have a choice, and we have a choice in every moment how we want to show up.
Or if we show up.
I have to actually add to that. I did Julie's exercise. I think I made it a game. Like, I always, whenever it seems like too big, I'm like, I'm just going to try this as like just a fun little exercise, just see what happens. I dare you, universe. Right. And I did that. Actually, it was a day in my life I did, and it was a pie. And I had how much of my day I wanted spent in all my different pieces of the pie. And COVID happened and I got all of that. So that's what you're saying. It's like Robin says it all the time too. You put down what you want and know that the universe can give you even more than you can imagine.
And Julie, one of the major things that you said when we first met you was remember. I mean, I actually have it. I made it very big and bold. Manifestation is easy. I mean, my paper has all been, but these are the exercises. And I really do have them on my desk.
Oh, yeah.
Big and bold. Remember, manifestation is easy. And the more you say that to yourself, the easier it will become. And the truer these manifestations will become realized.
Yes. So you have to be careful what you think and manifest.
That is so key. People need to hear that.
Be careful. That's why when I'm teaching and working with my students, we connect with our soul first. We reconnect. We learn to hear the sweet song of our own soul, because it drowns out everybody else's idea of who we're supposed to be. You have to release anything that doesn't serve you. Then you have to begin to rejuvenate that soul, love that soul, get very clear about how you can organize your life around what you're hearing. And then once you start to sort of write it down like you guys did, things start to manifest. You're reclaiming your power. It's all about you are powerful.
Well, and I think to what you're saying and about being powerful, choosing the words and the feeling that goes along with those words is key. Because as you said, be careful what you're putting out there, because I know many people, they stay in that place of fear. So just as powerful as we can say, we want to live with fulfillment, we want to live with joy, we want to live with peace, the more you say, I'm scared and I'm frightened, you perpetuate that with the same amount of power. So pay attention to that.
Or you don't feel worthy.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that gets away a lot of people, is that you're taught from a very young age, no, you should not, you don't need that. You shouldn't have that. And it's very hard to untrain your brain.
It's hard to break old habits. One of my projects, I had this idea to do soul power cards, affirmation, I am powerful, I am worthy is one. So I had done everything for this fabulous card deck a year ago. Something didn't feel quite right. I am sad. These I am statements. And I started to think about, well, if you took that literally, I am sad. Well, I'm not sad. I'm many things. I have some sadness right now. I have some things that are making me feel not powerful now. But what if I change my affirmations to I have power? I have worthiness. Everything is available to me. It's just that I also have a choice as to when I'm going to be able and ready to claim what I have. So I totally and completely redesigned these soul power cards with I have, and they're coming out this spring, and they're all about owning everything that you have with the choice of deciding when and where you own it.
That is perfect.
Yes.
It's just to know that you have
it. Right. It's all there. Right.
All there. You have, if I had a nickel for every time I told that to my students, you have everything at your fingertips. And it's also real power. It's where the power comes from. Not always running around happy-go-lucky, and life is hard. Human life is really hard. And so when we're not feeling empowered or feeling the things that we want to feel, I think it's comforting to know I may not be feeling that now, but I know I have everything.
I really love that. And I think that can help. We all have tragedies at different times in our lives, but I think universally over the last year, many of us have felt them more than others and collectively. So I feel like where you felt powerless and where you felt sadness and you felt real fear because you are mourning the norm or you're mourning real loss of life. I believe if you can just say, I have hope, I have worthiness, all of that, just knowing you have it. And then after a while, the more you can say, I have it, then you can start to own it with that feeling.
And you also know that it's there always. So that was another empowering thing. Like right now, I have grief and I am going to stay and process this grief. But I know that I have strength and I have love and I have connectedness that will help me when I choose. So that's also a very powerful statement. I choose to experience this now, process this, but I know I have all these other things.
Great.
That's brilliant.
You bring all of this, we always say it's like this woo-woo stuff down to just like the real deal level. And the way you've just walked us through all of these learnings that you have and how you apply them every day, it's just, it's so easy. You are such a teacher at heart. I mean, it just shines through you. So,
well, you walk the walk. And that's clear. You're doing the work.
Almost every class of mine starts with a hypothesis. Okay, my hypothesis is this. Argue with me. Do you guys think that that's right? I mean, it's that kind of raising the bar on how we communicate and how we build evidence and how we bring scientific vigor and language and rigor to the idea of spiritual seeking. I think that's really needed. So I think
I agree.
Programs like this.
I agree. And I feel like, I hope that that's part of what we're doing right now is to help move that forward. Let's start proving these things.
Right.
Because we know that with our souls, but let's have some more data.
Exactly. But Robin, just what you and Karen are doing here is so important. One of the reasons is you are, by virtue of having this conversation, the three of us are raising the vibration and starting to put it out there and maintain it. So the more people that are listening, that are open to exploring what seems to me should be totally natural as energetic beings. But, the more people do that, then that in turn is feeding the higher vibration and we'll be able to sustain it enough that we can kind of build a base, a foundational place from which to launch. So people need to keep seeking with Robin, as a matter of fact.
I love that. You can't say
that is the hope.
Any better.
That is the hope. Well, let's talk about too, when we were with you last year, we had a reading with you and you did help us, even from a past life perspective, deepen our relationship with one another by looking back at a past lifetime and actually helping Karen see that, I think. Do you want to talk about that, Karen?
Yeah. So just for context, Robin had come to visit me we were in New York, actually, pitching a lot of ideas, and had a really great experience with Michelle Brock, who was another past life regressionist. And it was just a magical day. And it was the first time I had ever had that experience at that level. And I remember the last thing that Michelle said to me was that some kind of like vortex had opened up in me at the very end of that session. So anyway, we came back and had a great night, right? We were talking about the session itself and just really feeding off of each other's energy. And the next day we had a conversation with you, and we can talk about that in a moment. But I think what happened with our conversation and the way that you were able to sort of open me up even more about all of the possibilities, I had a spontaneous past life vision, 2 of them actually. And I had them before. They were like little memories that were deep inside of me. They were almost like bad dreams that I thought I had about being on a ship in the middle of the ocean that was sinking. And you had said on our reading that you had mentioned something about seeing me on a ship or seeing me on a boat of some kind and there being a terrible accident. And I couldn't place it. I couldn't think of what that was. And I realized that I had been on that ship with Robin, who was a little girl or a little child.
Boy.
And I was trying to save him and I couldn't. And then we both drowned together. But the memory was less about the drowning of this connection, this partnership of wanting to support her on her journey and the closeness of the relationship that we felt. And it was so real. It was just but it brought me to tears because it was like that, oh yeah, now I remember. Now I know why I feel this way about this person, and just brought back so much understanding of who we are as soul sisters, soul partners. It was amazing.
It was funny when I was first talking to you guys and not trying to do a past life reading, we were just talking. And I have to tell you, being with your energy, and I was overwhelmed. And before we even got on the phone, I knew what you both looked like. And I don't look people up. I mean, people are like, oh, psychic medium. They're looking people up on Google. First of all, I have a life. I got a lot of other things to do. I'm not looking anybody up. I mean, If I don't have to be on the computer, I am not, let me just say, right? So I'd already kind of had a very good idea of your personalities and I was tuning into you. And then Karen, I was so aware of you on a boat as a woman, as a younger woman, and you lost a son. And so I was actually trepidatious about talking to you because I thought, oh God, what a horrible tragedy. This poor woman has her son drowned on this boat. I see water, and this just agony of this poor woman, dealing and seeing her son drowning. And so I thought, oh God, do I bring it up? Do I not? Like, oh, what am I going to say when I speak to this woman? Maybe I'll get something else to tune into. And I think you remember me kind of moving about, is water there, was there a son that died or, and I was like, kind of like, because I didn't want to bring up a really horrible wound, but I just felt it. If memory serves, normally when I read for people, it just comes right through me because I don't retain it because it's not information for me. I'm the vessel by which it's being, given. But I do remember that because it was so visceral. It was almost like I could almost feel the agony with you as the mother and Robin as a child. Now, I didn't really tune into the young boy. I felt like the boy was maybe 2, 3, 4. I mean, very young. Funny, as I was preparing and getting so excited for our day today, they'd been together before, but the roles were reversed. And then all of a sudden, boom, I see Robin and you were a man, Germanic, long hair and a big beard. And I believe it's either like Scandinavia, northern cold. You had skins on and Karen, you were this man's daughter and you were also very close. And the mother had passed and you, Robin, as Karen's father, and you were very, very, very close. And you in that lifetime, Robin, die first and leave this daughter. But I was very, very aware and I could see you both. And you felt very Germanic. And like I said, you felt somewhere around 1600s. Yeah, it was very, very early. And I thought, these guys just keep coming back together. And, that's actually not uncommon. A lot of my past life regression clients, it's amazing how families tend to travel in packs. So I do think that you were familial, here are your friends and like sisters, but not. But before, I believe there were many lifetimes where you were actually blood relative, familial, connected. I think it's wonderful that you two are able to have this lifetime together and to do amazing things and support each other.
We're feeling pretty fortunate too, because, it's funny. It's like, I'm glad we didn't grow up as sisters because the magic of what's come together between us is that recognition of, even though we had such different backgrounds and so many different life experiences, it's just one aha after another. We talk almost every day. And there's always that, which to me, like, proves so strongly what we're talking about is the real stuff, right? Like, to find this person who is so different from you, who, you really we shouldn't be friends. There's so many reasons why we shouldn't, but the magic that happened that brought us together is the thing that I think we feed off of each other and helps us both on this life journey.
It's definitely a very clear soul connection that you guys share, a wavelength. And, people should keep an eye out for that. And they actually meet somebody that they feel like they know, even though they're a total stranger. That's not a coincidence. I mean, there's a connection there. There's some energy that needs to pass between them, to be paying attention to those special connections and also paying attention to the connections that are hard, that are difficult relationships, because these tend to be karmic bonds that you need to uncover and you need to fix. And I got to tell you, my experience is you don't fix it this lifetime. You guys will be back at it the next one, going at it again. So it's, never put off tomorrow what you can get done today.
A lot of times those are your biggest teachers. Those relationships are really where you do end up evolving as a soul.
I ask this question to my students all the time. Who lives a more rich and knowledge-filled life? Is it the monk that is in the ivory tower and spends all of his or her time in prayer, speaking only to God? Or is it the homeless person that's on the street corner in a major city that is interacting with all sorts of life every single day? Whose life is more important? Whose life is filled with more learning? I don't know, but my guess is that when we are truly interacting in the human classroom with other spirits having a human experience, that is where the rich lessons reside. You're here to experience the human and work out the human emotions and the human interactions and perfect your highest and best self in messy situations. I mean, I think that's why we come here.
Definitely.
So be thankful for all those messy situations. You know, you're learning, you're ascending faster, you're working out your karma.
You must be listening into our phone conversations there, Julie.
That's right.
That's what
I must be psychic.
When you tapped into us, because we did talk to you about potentially doing a mini reading today for the two of us, a little update. Where do you see us at this moment in our lives? You don't want to miss Julie's reading for Karen and I. Look for part 2 of this episode to hear what she reveals about what's coming up in our lives. And to work with Julie or to find out about her classes and events, please visit lightwellcenter.com. That's LIGHTWELLCENTER.com. Thanks.